5 with your Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald. We're joined by a fellow JAKIB host. You got him in the afternoons here on Sports Take, and of course on Sundays with his boy Seth Joyner. We just played the promo, and Mike Missinelli and Devin Caney on the Eagles post-game show. Our buddy Derrick Gunn jumps in with us, and I hadn't realized. D. Gunn, you did not make an in-season appearance. The last time we had you on was preseason. Why does it seem like it hasn't been that long ago?
Well, from what I was told, both you and John McMullen deliberately blocked me from the show. I don't know what I did to offend you both, but I understand. And because it's a new year, I have a new attitude. I will not hold any grudges against my fellow man, nor my fellow cohorts here in the JAKIB Sports Media Machine.
All right, you got to take a bullet. I'll take the bullet because it's we both booked. John and I both booked the guests, but I was the guy. You know, we haven't had D Gunn on forever. I brought you up yesterday, so that's on me. That's my bad. I'll take the blame for that one. Shame on us. We should have had you on sooner. My bad.
That's okay. No, that's okay. I understand. You guys have a great show. You don't need me. It's understandable.
Oh, we need D Gunn. Come on. I desperately. I'm going to hang on to you like a life raft right here. D
oh, man. Hey, and a belated Happy New Year to both of you.
Hey,
same to you, big guy.
Same to you. Well, you know, it's an exciting new year. The Eagles got the #1 seed, obviously. Maybe not with the style points a lot of the fan base wanted, but you know, I've taken kind of a step back over the past couple days here, D Gunn, and man, they're set up. I'm not concerned at all. I sit here and look at this potential path, and there's not too many teams on this side of the bracket in the NFC that scare me, especially at Lincoln Financial Field. The one exception would be the San Francisco 49ers, who I think have a very good team, very well-rounded team. But I'm sorry, they have a rookie third-string quarterback started. If I'm Hassan Reddick and I'm those guys on the defensive side of the ball, I want to be the team to knock him off the peg, so to speak.
I'm very curious to see how he handles the bright light and the pressure of postseason play. Compared to regular season play, the intensity and the pressure is magnified tenfold because you're one and done. You know, if you make minuscule mistakes during a regular season, obviously you have the next game to fix and tweak whatever mistakes that you've made. You don't have that luxury now, and you know teams are going to come at him differently. You know, they have enough game tape on him now. To do whatever they can to try to rattle him. But I will say this, as I've said, you know, for consecutive weeks leading up to this point, you know, kudos to Kyle Shanahan for what he's been able to do in terms of getting this young man settled in a hurry and the team as a whole not missing a beat. When you think about when he took over this team, it was at a crucial juncture against which was a really good Miami team. And, you know, Garoppolo goes down the second series of the game, and you're thinking, who the heck is Brock Purdy? Doesn't even have a football name. This kid comes in, and the machine keeps rolling. And here we sit. They've won 10 in a row, okay? And I've had a chance to see him play 2-3 times between that moment and now. And this kid – they let him make all the throws. He can throw on the run. But when you look at the wealth of talent he is encircled with, and now Deebo Samuel is back, you know, I think the biggest plus for them was that trade they made for Christian McCaffrey was a crime. I don't know who allowed that trade.
You're right.
But that was a crime, you know. And so it only enhanced that offense that much more. But you're right. That young man will get his feet wet this weekend at home, but eventually if they keep winning, he's got to go on the road and he's got to come here to face this defense, which is arguably as good of a defense as that 49ers defense.
Yeah, I can't believe you guys are going to make me play devil's advocate and sing the praises of
Brock Purdy defense. Usually I'm the San Francisco guy.
One, right now, the guy who's probably going to win the MVP, Patrick Mahomes, finished with the second best quarterback rating. And yes, I readily acknowledge quarterback rating is an imperfect way to look at quarterbacks. except for every other one. It's the best of a imperfect lot. Mahomes is at 105.2. Jalen Hurts is third. Tua actually hung on and had the best quarterback ranking, believe it or not, even though he finished the season as badly as he did. Jalen Hurts, 101.6. Brock Purdy, 107. He's got a better quarterback rating than either Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts.
Stop. I'm going to be the Gunn.
What do you mean stop? The numbers are the numbers.
He didn't play the whole season. He didn't come close to playing the whole season.
Correct. But you can only judge him on the plays, the games that he did start, right?
To call that number imperfect is a disservice to imperfect. I'm looking it up real quick.
Yeah.
Just from the film, Pro Football has him 15, which is pretty good. 15 of 38, which is pretty good for solid. But when Mahomes and they're asked to do more, Kyle's protecting him. Kyle's the best schemer. Yeah. Well, maybe Andy, but if it's not Andy, it's Kyle. He's doing a lot of things. And that's part of it. I mean, he deserves credit for picking up the baton. He's played better than Jimmy Garoppolo. He's played better than Trey Lance, so he deserves a lot of credit. But, he's not better than Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts or, the good quarterbacks in the NFC, Dak Prescott.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Kirk Cousins. That's where you go. And this is another reason for optimism, D-Gun.
Right.
In the AFC, you got the murderers row. You got Mahomes. You got Burrow. You got Justin Herbert. You got Josh Allen. In the NFC, who's the second best quarterback?
Kirk
Eagles
Cousins.
have the best. Yeah, it's Kirk.
Kirk Cousins.
Or Dak. Dak is, I probably still put Dak ahead. I know people in this town hate Dak.
Yeah.
By the way, trivia question for you guys. What did Dak Prescott and C.J. Gardner-Johnson have in common?
I had no idea.
They both came out the same year.
They led the league in interceptions in both.
Very good.
But that's a good one.
And by the way, no, you couldn't do it to me again, McMullen. Yes, the Dak Prescott led the league in interceptions, despite missing 5 games, and there are some stats that are pretty ugly for Dak Prescott. I'll give you another one. He's 8 out of his last 9 and starts against the Philadelphia Eagles. Do we not factor that in?
I think Dak's a good player. I just said Dak to me is the second best quarterback on the NFC side. I know he's had some bad games, but I would put him ahead of Kirk Cousins.
I don't know what's going on with him, but I've looked at several of his past games, and some of those interceptions he basically telegraphed. The one he threw this past Sunday, he never looked off the primary receiver, and as you see the DBs converged, why would you throw in that window? And the ball he threw was slightly behind the receiver, right to the defensive back. I don't know what's going on with him in terms of interceptions in 7 consecutive games. In 15 and 12 games for Dak Prescott. And, years past, we would applaud Dak for being a good protector of the football. He's been anything but that. But, Jody, that stat does come into play. Some players, some teams just play better against certain teams for whatever the case may be, especially within a division. Whatever the case may be, that seems to be the case. First of all, I don't even think Dallas is going to survive Monday night against Tampa, to be honest. The way Brady's slinging that ball now, and Mike Evans seems to be back. That's going to be a tough one. I don't know that if you're a betting man, Dallas should win that game, but because of the way Dallas stumbled to the finish line, because of the way Dak has been playing for much of the season, and you go back to that last game Brady just had, dropping dimes to Evans. Anybody playing Tom Brady in a postseason game, you better bring the A game. You better. I
think you got to win that. If you're Dallas, I think you got to win that game in the first 55 minutes. In other words, you can't let Tom be close and have the football. Then
with
you're
2
in
minutes
trouble.
Left. Yes,
but they should be good enough to have that game in control. When there's 3 minutes left and Tampa gets the ball. But we'll see. I mean, I think there's a chance for upsets all over in the
I
NFC,
agree.
with the exception of San Francisco. San Francisco is going to beat Seattle.
Yeah.
Everybody else, even the Giants against Minnesota. Look, Minnesota should win the game, but
Giants played them tough.
yeah.
Yeah, played them very tough.
It wouldn't
Christmas
shock me if
Right.
the Giants win the game, is what I'm saying. It wouldn't shock. Dallas should win the game against Tampa, but it wouldn't shock me if Tampa wins the game.
I will say this, John, because I've said this numerous occasions on Sports Take, that when you look at the way the entire season has played itself out in terms of who you expect to win and expect to lose, I would say on an average, there's been 3 to 4 games every week over the 17-game season where you sit back after the week is complete and go, I didn't expect that. I didn't see that coming. And I expect the playoffs to be the same way, especially because every game in the wild card weekend is a rematch from the regular season, which is interesting in itself. Every matchup, the opponents have played each other already, so they're very familiar with each other, which means they're going to be throwing the kitchen sink at each other as well. And as you just said, always expect the unexpected based on what we've seen this season leading up to wild card weekend.
And oh, by the way, one of those matchups is the Ravens and the Bengals, and the Bengals beat them twice. And that was not going to change. That would come damn close to shocking me. If the Ravens this week, with either Lamar hasn't played in 6 weeks, Jackson coming off the bench, we saw Jalen Hurts this week and his level of play after being out for just 2 weeks. It wasn't up at the level we thought it was going to be. Now there's an injury added in, much like Lamar. There's the injury added in. If he plays, I don't know how much faith I have in him. If Hundley plays, I know I don't have any faith in him. So add that one to your list, Johnny Mac. Yes, San Francisco is going to beat Seattle. Yes, Baltimore is going to beat, Cincinnati's going to beat Baltimore too.
Yeah.
D-Gun, a lot of concern over the last 24, 48 hours because the Eagles didn't get those style points, didn't have the blowout win that people wanted against a backup-filled Giant lineup. What's your biggest concern with the Philadelphia Eagles? 10 days out, 11 days out before they're going to play. Don't know exactly what the day is going to be. Don't even know who the opponent is. But you can evaluate your own roster. Going into that game, whoever it may be against, whenever it's played, what's your biggest concern?
Getting Lane Johnson healthy. It's obvious Jack Driscoll is not the answer on the right side. And for whatever reason, they don't want to move Mailata to the right side and insert Andre Dillard. The numbers are staggering in terms of the Eagles' win-loss percentage with Lane on the right side compared to him not being there. Now, you would think, okay, a quarterback, maybe a wide receiver, running back, but an offensive lineman having that type of impact on the success or failure of an offense is just astounding in a lot of ways. I think they need Lane back desperately to stabilize that right side. Even Lane is 85%, is 100% better than Driscoll on that right side. I've always said Jack Driscoll is a better offensive lineman moving forward in the run game than he is setting up the block. And I think the last 2 games basically have shown that. So for me, I would say ironing out the little kinks, because for 3 consecutive weeks, we've heard Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen tell us, I've got to do a better job in play calling. I've got to do a better job of this, that, and the other. Okay, well, a lot of times when you start leveling off like that, you start to see patterns that are consistent and ruts you get in that you cannot get out of. So I'm so elated that this Eagles team has that extra week to figure it out. Whereas Nick Sirianni gave the team a few days off this week, I heard Jalen Hurts was behind closed doors yesterday with Sirianni and Steichen going over film. Now, the biggest concern to me, the thing that really caught my ear was Sirianni in his postgame when he said Jalen was really hurting.
Yeah.
And as I said
that
prior,
was a surprise.
Because John, as you know, John, as you know, you're right, keeps everything close to the vest, doesn't reveal anything. But as I said prior to that Dallas game on Christmas Eve, and every time I talked to somebody, they kept telling me, oh, he'll be all right. Well, I said, well, what does that mean? He'll be all right. That was a consistent answer I would get. And every time I would ask, is it more than just a sprain? And as we sit here today, after they allowed him to sit out that Saints game when they knew that was a do-or-die game, and for your head coach to admit after the Giants game that he was really hurting, that tells me it runs deeper than just the sprain. And so
Yeah.
moving forward, is it something he's going to have to deal with that first game they play, or just giving him that extra, basically 2 weeks to get this thing treated? Will that be a significant boost in terms of how he functions in his offense? Because if it isn't, then that means they're going to reduce the number of RPOs. He's not going to be taken off running because you don't want him to take an unnecessary shot. And we've seen him take some shots that made you go, oh, when Malata said the one game, he said, hey, do you need, you want me to get the medics? He said, hey, man, get my bleep off. Help me get my bleep off the ground. Down the stretch, teams have defended him a little bit differently. Edge rushers are more disciplined in terms of not just running to the quarterback. They run and stop to set the edge and force them to make a move. So whoever they play that first round, there's something different coming. When we had Lane Johnson on the postgame show before he got injured, he would consistently tell us for 4 or 5 weeks, D-Gun, they gave us looks we weren't expecting, which means when you're an offensive juggernaut the way the Eagles were, as a defensive coordinator, what do? You try to flip the script. You've got to throw in some gadgets to try to disrupt their continuity. And I expect with this being in the playoffs, whoever they get in the first round, except Ed Donatel. Ed Donatel's own defense stinks. Ed Donatel's defense stunk when he was in Green Bay. Ed Donatel's defense.
I know you're a Green Bay guy.
Yes.
Yeah, Ed's had a difficult season. It's interesting. They run the same scheme as the Eagles.
Yes.
They run the Fangio scheme, as you know.
Yep.
And it shows you, it's all about communication. It's all about teaching. And that's why Jonathan Gannon's a good defensive coordinator for the people that dislike him. He's a tremendous teacher. Now, Ed Donatel, I think, has been coaching for about 100 years.
Yes, exactly.
The communication on that team in the back, in the secondary, is horrific, except for Patrick Peterson and Harrison Smith, because those guys have been playing forever, so they can handle everything. But all the young players just busted coverage. That's what impresses me most about the Eagles on the hindsight. For the most part, they've done a very good job with that. But when they do have problems with this defense, it's miscommunication. CJ's back. I don't think Avonte Maddox is going to be back for the divisional round, but it's pretty clear that they're not putting him on IR, so they think they might have him for either the championship game or the Super Bowl. And we'll see how that moves forward. But, for the most part, this defense has been pretty good.
Yeah.
And, we start talking about these coaches. This is another reason why you have to seize the moment, JG, because Shane Steichen's already got 3 interviews lined up, all ready to talk about Gannon in Houston is heating up. This is the moment, right?
And they knew this going in. They knew this going into this season. If they had a good measure of success, that teams will come after your coaches. That's just the nature of the beast across the NFL, and rightfully so. So Howie, it was all in for Howie, the way they structured this team. The urgency was, let's try to win it now, because you have decisions to make. You're going to have to replace a coach or coaches, because if those 2 guys leave, Gannon and Steichen, they're going to pick off some of the Eagles' assistants and elevate them in positions as well. And who are you bringing back? You got to pay Jalen, whether you pay him that extension or whether you franchise tag him. You have to pay him. That's going to take up a good chunk of any money you have looking towards free agency. And you have so many players who are on 1-year deals, especially on that defense. And Howie's got some very strategic decisions to make. Now, with 2 first-round picks, if X amount of players leave on defense, I expect them to attack the defensive side of the ball come the draft and take 2 high-profile defensive players. And there's a lot of good players coming out. If somehow, some way, Howie can work his magic and keep more people than we're thinking about, kudos to him, and then they can address other areas when it comes to the draft.
As John and I pointed out way back when, the Eagle coaching staff this year came back en masse. That just doesn't happen. No one keeps their entire coaching staff together. The Eagles did. Oh, this next upcoming year, that's not happening. There will be changes because there will be individuals who are leaving. All right, D-Gun, this is what I love about talking to you. You were there every day on top of everything beat reporter for the 2017 Eagles. People rightfully so want to compare this year to that year because the ending was pretty good. And there are some similarities.
Yeah.
The Eagles finished that year kind of limping to the finish line.
Right.
They beat the Giants. Nick Foles was okay his first start after Carson Wentz, but then he was pretty putrid against Oakland the next week. They found a way to win an ugly 19-10 game, and they went to the unstoppable Nate Sudfeld in the last game because they were protecting Nick from getting injured. But they didn't exactly fly home, and then they got to the postseason, and we know what happened. Ripped off the victories that they did. A lot of that team for me was, and you know better because you were there every day, there was a good mojo around them. And I think you understand what I mean by the word mojo.
Sure.
That they just gathered together as a group, solidarity, one focus, the one next man up mentality. How does this year's team compare to that team in mojo?
I think it's very comparable. And I'll give the Eagles organization credit for this because they have been consistent in this regard. Even before the 17 season, they are very, very adamant about finding guys who are not just exceptional athletes, but good locker room character. And I think when you look at the way both teams are structured, they were and are very good locker room character type guys. Now you've had a couple of blips on the radar, Slay calling out a guy, AJ Brown calling out a guy, but it was nothing that just blew up and became the topic of conversation for an entire week. And it's not this group as well as that group. It's not a bunch of me guys. It's a bunch of we guys. And I think the veteran leadership in that locker room that basically are holdovers from that 17 team set the standard for what's expected in that locker room. The Lane Johnsons, the Jason Kelsey's, Brandon Graham's, Fletcher Cox, those kind of guys set the example of hey, this is what is expected of you when you come here, not just as a player, but how you conduct your business inside and outside of this locker room. When you look at this Eagles team, you don't see a lot of outside noise like you do across the league with other teams. They don't have, did you hear of any DUIs this year with this team? Any domestic abuse with this team? Any suspensions for substance abuse with this team? No, it was a very focused group. And he kept adding pieces. You kept adding established pieces along the way. Proven veterans like an Ndamukong Suh and a Linval Joseph who know how to handle that business. And that's an all-encompassed umbrella because new guys and young guys who come in here look at those guys and say, okay, if this is how they are doing things here, I've got to toe the line or I'm not going to be here very long. There's some teams, some organizations, it's like the Keystone Cops. You don't know who's running the organization. Yeah. And everybody's running amok, and it shows Arizona, Houston, so on and so forth, teams like that. You don't have that problem here. And when you have that cohesiveness and continuity within the structure of a team and an organization, look at the results you can get, i.e. 2022 for this team.
And that brings me back to the quarterback. And last one from me. Follow Derrick at Real D Gunn on Twitter. Post-game show here, JAKIB Sports. Gunn on one, you can watch as well. JAKIB Sports YouTube page. You mentioned the guys, and they are. It starts with the guys who've been here, and Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson and Brandon. What a tremendous leader Brandon Graham is, and Fletcher as well. A little bit more understated, but still in that category. Yeah. But the quarterback, man, the young quarterback, and you bring up that phrasing because quarterbacks are taught.
Yeah.
Taught that when you have success, it's we. When you fail, when you have hiccups, it's me. It's me, And Jalen Hurts is that natural leader. And let's be honest, he shouldn't have played against the Giants in Week 18.
Right.
But he did play.
Right.
And I think that resonates in the locker room. In a weird way, is that maybe the silver lining? Because it's clear the Eagles didn't want him out there. They hoped they would get one win, beat Dallas or beat New Orleans, and then he could sit out until the divisional round. You think that's a silver lining that he got back out there and played? and that just resonates with the locker room.
There's no question about it. Because if I'm looking at Jalen Hurts, I'm thinking, man, knowing what I know about his injury, if he can get out there and play, who am I to not get out there and play as well? You know, I think as a leader, I mean, Jalen Hurts to me was born to lead. You know, you look at him in Alabama, look at him in Oklahoma, there's a measure of success he had in both entities. Look at how much he's elevated his game in just 1 year here with the Eagles. At 24, 25 years old, there are people that are just born to lead. And because of it, the way his play enhanced overall, everybody stepped in line. He's like the Pied Piper of this team. You know, nobody looks at him like, hey, man, you're only 24, 25. You can't tell me what to do. And then, you look at his primary weapons, they're all his age, basically, Devontae, Quez, Dallas, they're all his age, So Jalen Hurts took the role of being that guy who wanted to put the onus of success or failure on his shoulders. That's a lot to ask of a 24, 25-year-old professional in the most magnified and scrutinized position in all of pro football, that quarterback position. And he has handled everything beautifully. He has said all the right things. He has done all the right things. And this is a significant reason why this team is where it is today. I was hoping that they would put him out there against the Saints, get that win, and let him rest an additional week. Unfortunately, they spun that roulette wheel. It did not come up in their favor. Thus, he was forced into action against this Giants team. Now, I don't think he took any significant hits in that Giants game, but I think it was also, John, an opportunity for him to go out there and test. Okay, what throws bother me the most? Is it the deep throw? Is it the intermediate throw? Is it going across my body? What's the thing that irritates me the most? And I can't get that statement out of my head from Sirianni. He was hurting a lot. Okay. And he had to play the entire game hurting a lot. Okay. So I'm hoping he didn't do any more extensive damage to that shoulder, And if he did, obviously we're not going to know about it because they don't tell us anything,
Yeah.
But he went in there, did just enough. They kept the offense basically vanilla. Got a 19-point lead and cruised to the finish line. And now, hopefully, with modern medicine technology and all the gadgets they use to stimulate the muscles and the tissues, hopefully, over the next 2 weeks, they will get him where he needs to be.
All right, D. Gunn, I want to close it out with you with an optimistic condiment question. And here's what I mean by that. I'm a hot dog guy. I like hot dogs. I'll eat a plain hot dog.
Right.
The more stuff I can put on my hot dog, the better. I like to doctor up my hot dog. If you're an Eagle fan and you're getting a hot dog,
right.
You're stating that ahead of time, going to get a hot dog, which is a playoff victory. There are 4 teams potentially that the Eagles could play. Mm-hmm. Seahawks, highly unlikely. Don't think they're beating the 49ers. But I remember Pete Carroll sticking it to the Eagles in the playoffs just a couple of years ago. The shot that Carson Wentz took him out of the game early. So there's a little revenge factor there. Mm-hmm. The Vikings, which, believe it or not, Jalen Reagor could come back to town again. And, they could push Jefferson out, even though the Eagles passed on him. That New York Giant football team, which the Eagles have kind of dominated of late, and they put up a good fight against the Eagles this past week with their subs, or the Dallas Cowboys. If you acknowledge and believe the Eagles are going to win against any of those 4 teams, which Johnny Mack has said a couple times here today, the only team that puts any fear into them is the 49ers.
Yeah. I would just add, I don't think they can play the Vikings. Tampa, Dallas, Seattle,
Tampa. I meant
the
Tampa
Giants
instead of Vikings.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for correcting me. That Brady guy who did kind of stick his finger in the Eagles' eye last year in the postseason.
Yeah.
They won the biggest game against Brady 5 years ago, but is it even close? Do you want the Cowboys? If you believe that John McMullen is telling you the truth, that the only thing to fear is the 49ers, and oh, by the way, they're quarterbacked by a rookie quarterback, who are you rooting for, the Eagles, to play this week if you're an Eagles fan?
Well, I would initially say, with John saying they probably can't play Minnesota. I would have to say, I don't know if I want to see Brady. As mediocre as that Tampa Bay team is, there's something. Come on,
you're running
Brady.
Scared. Johnny Mack just told you you don't have to be afraid of anybody except maybe San Francisco.
I don't put fear or scared into the equation. It's just that there is one man who sees everything,
Yeah.
who knows everything, and for whatever reason has the ability to turn that light switch on and elevate his play, especially if his pass catchers are healthy. He has his number one center back finally after missing like 14 games this season. So the offensive line has more fluidity to it now. I would have to say I would rather take my chances with Dallas coming here. Even though Dak has had a great measure of success against this team, that run defense has not gotten any better this season. If the Eagles run the ball, and we've been screaming, run the football, and they haven't had the measure of success running the football that we've been spoiled to watch. You look at the last 4 games, Chicago, Dallas, Saints, and the Giants, they haven't had that tremendous success running the football. I will still take my chances against Dallas here, especially, for whatever reason, Dak can't get out of his own way. This Eagles defense, this Eagles team has not won the turnover battle now for 4 consecutive games, and they could have had 3 or 4 picks Sunday against Davis Webb, and they didn't. Those things correct themselves. So I would go with Dallas right now.
Yeah. I'm not fearful of anyone, as you pointed out, Jody. But if you're telling me who would I rather play, it's the Giants. The Giants are terrible. The Giants have no chance to beat the Eagles. If Dallas brings their A game,
that ball comes off Reed Blankenship's shoulder pads the wrong way. They recover that onside kick. It wasn't all that far from being a competitive game in the last 2 minutes.
That's a human nature game. They beat them like a drum when it counted, 48-22.
Right.
The talent level between those two teams is so that's the worst team in the playoffs from a talent perspective.
Right.
And they have a chance to upset Minnesota because Minnesota's got a lot of issues, a lot of injuries.
Yep.
That to me would be the perfect situation for the Eagles. So there's better situations. Dallas is talented. They might be playing poorly, but they're talented. Tampa Bay, like D-Gun said, don't spit in the wind. Don't tug Tom Brady's cape. You don't want that necessarily when measured. And Seattle's better than the Giants. So if you're asking me for the perfect scenario, they could play the Giants 100 times and they're going to beat them 99. I'll leave one sliver for the Giants.
And as we always say, you know how hard it is to beat a team 3 times in one season.
Not that team. That's
like
Cincinnati, Baltimore.
The only thing that concerns me about the Giants is Wink Martindale's ability to bring pressure from anywhere. This Giants team blitzes over 42% of the time. That's astronomical in today's football. Wink Martindale doesn't care who lines up. You're blitzing from somewhere.
Oh, he's blitzing. Yeah.
But
then it's 50-50 ball. AJ, good luck.
Yep.
Good luck with that.
Exactly. Yeah. But their secondary's gotten a little bit healthier. There's still not a great secondary. The thing is, kudos to Dabo for what he's done with Daniel Jones.
Oh yeah.
Because his intermediate game, when you look at the Giants' success, look at him on how they have so much success. With their intermediate passing game. And Daniel Jones, man, he's zipping it in there, which has helped be able to keep the chains moving. Now, I'm not afraid of Daniel Jones. When you talk about quarterbacks you could face potentially, that's the least of my concerns. But Dabo has found a way to get the most out of Daniel Jones.
He's a very good coach.
And so you don't know. You don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. But, I would have put Dallas out of their misery. But they are a much more talented team, but for whatever reason, they still have not figured out a way to stop the run. And they let a third stringer beat them on Sunday.
Yeah, Sam Howell. Yeah.
And he ran up the middle of their defense for a touchdown from like 15 yards out.
Yeah.
So that means they still have issues in terms of defending the run. I'll take my chances against them. John's right. Maybe the Giants first. Dallas will be a close second.
D-Gun, since we know now you're available on Tuesday mornings, if you don't have grandfather duties, we will reach out.
I have grandfather duties every day.
He
I'm like a school bus.
Inadvertently sent me a text last night that he meant to send to somebody else about his granddaughter. I said, hello, you talking to me? He said, oops, sorry, John.
Yeah, what happened was my oldest daughter has 3 kids. She brought the kids over, and the 17-month, the 18-month-old granddaughter, she's a whip. She basically tells you what she's going to do, what she's not going to do. And she stopped as a little girl. And every time she has to leave, she screams, no, fights, kicks, tooth nail, doesn't want to put a jacket on. So when I take her outside to give her to her dad, she's kicking and flailing. No, stop it, stop it. So I was sitting there to the family and say, hey, she did it again, basically. You know?
She likes staying with Grandpa. Well,
Oh,
we
yeah.
like having Grandpa on too, which means expect a request 3 weeks from today. After the Eagles secure NFC championship status, the Tuesday before the Super Bowl, we're getting you back on in the same exact time, same exact spot.
Well, based on how frequently you've asked me to be on from preseason,
that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm booking you now, because I dropped the football on the fact that we haven't had you in 6 months.
I expect to be on based on past reference. I expect to be on again sometime after the draft in April.
Before the draft, somewhere thereabouts. No, you're back in 3 weeks, D Gunn.
Oh,
Thank you much for jumping in with us today.
Thanks, D Gunn.
You're
Tell
welcome.
both of the boys, Big Barrett and Rob Ellis, we send our regards.
Will do.
That's Derrick Gunn from Sports Take here on the JAKIB YouTube channel. And, of course, on Sundays, he gets to sit next to Seth Joyner. And sometimes I see D Gunn won't admit to this. He rolls his eyes, too, when Seth starts to go off about the lack of aggressiveness of the Eagles defense. He does a great job with us on Sundays in the post-game stuff, too. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald coming back. He brought up, D-Gun brought up the draft. I want to bring up a draft thing with Johnny Mack. Yeah, I know. We can talk about the Eagles. We don't know who they're going to play, so we can only do so much with speculation. Would you rather face Brady or the Cowboys? Who do you have a better chance against? Who do you want to stick it to? Yeah. We're doing all that, yes. But there are other things to consider, one of which is the draft pick. We know the Eagles are going to draft 10th. A couple of places came out with mock drafts immediately after. It's one of those times of the year where you see that. And a couple of names to the Philadelphia Eagles that I just can't believe. I'll run them by Johnny Mack when we come back. He's McMullen, I'm McDonald. It's Mac and Mac Birds 365.